welcome to this episode. It's a standalone retrospective today. We are 10 episodes live, and we thought we'd take the opportunity at this point to take a step back, have a chat with some of the people who've been involved in the making and development and distribution of the podcast, and just pick out some of the lessons, some of the highlights, and some views to the future for what we want the show and what we want We Do B2B to achieve. So you're going to hear from a number of our different team members today, looking at all of that stuff, and we hope you enjoy it. First up, we have Carmen Hogan from the marketing team here at Blue Ocean. She is our newest recruit, I want to say. How long have you been in the seat now?
6 months.
6 months?
Yeah.
Bit of a roller coaster?
It's been a bit of a journey, yes. In the best possible way.
Yeah. And the podcast has been part of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It started off with us having this idea to get a podcast out in the world and to add value to the B2B space, and not knowing how to go about that, which involved a lot of learning and figuring out how to actually get this podcast up and publish it out to the different channels. So yeah, that's been a pretty awesome journey. I've definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, I think all of us have, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's been, so we're 10 episodes in now.
Yeah.
And definitely some learnings along the way. What's been the biggest one for you?
Like just the whole distribution piece around Buzzsprout.
Yeah.
Getting the content out there, and finding a much more efficient way to write show notes, because those can be quite time consuming. And yeah, just the whole process of, mapping out that whole journey of when you are publishing your podcast, where do you want to send them, what kind of content are you publishing? Yeah.
So you did a bunch of research and you came back with this like kick-ass standard operating procedure for us for how we do this. And yes. I won't lie, I don't think we could have done this thing without that piece of paper and without your input. Yeah. So what are the actual building blocks? Like you talk about Buzzsprout. What are the distribution mechanisms that we use? What are the cadences that we work to? How does that whole piece come together?
So a great place to start is with production, because if you don't have the content, you can't get anything out. And then you want to think about your post-production. So what's that going to look like, getting the message out on social media? What platforms are you going to play? What are your distribution channels? And then also where do you want to lead people? What are you trying to achieve? Are you wanting to own the space? What community or niche are you trying to add value into? And then there's that whole piece of guest outreach, and how that all comes into play. So yeah, there's lots of moving parts.
There are. I love the guest outreach piece.
Yeah.
It's a really fun part of the process for me.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting as well to kind of see what people's observations are of it. You get some people who are they know it, they're aware of the show, they're keen to contribute. Other people are they almost have imposter syndrome. Like,
yeah.
Why would you want to hear from me?
Yeah.
But it's great. We've had a fantastic range of guests, and let's actually have a look through some of those guests. So we've asked the question of what are the things that you've taken away from the first 10 episodes? What are the highlights? So if we just recap, we had building your commercial confidence with Henrik next door, trust, the currency of B2B with Roland Lehmans.
I know that well.
Yes, yeah. We had unclogging a constipated sales funnel with Lee Hunter, which to date is our most listened episode, I should say. Why the Fork are we doing a podcast with producer Louis? How to pitch a brand refresh with Shannon Bayliss. The big double D debate, differentiation and distinctiveness with yours truly. Scaling up B2B SaaS with Brandon Palmer from Henry. That was a great episode.
Yeah.
How to get the best out of your agency with Sovia Mughal from TradeMe. Driving growth in the New Zealand tech sector with Amanda Armstrong from Revenue Lab. And finally, our most recent episode, which was putting some buzz in B2B with Viv Conway from Girls Get Off.
And that's the episode that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah. I really found the episode with Viv to be super inspiring, and how learnings from B2C can translate into B2B. Coming from a B2C background myself, it's always, B2B, the B2B camp has always been notoriously known to be a bit sterile and boring. And coming into a B2B marketing agency, it's been so awesome to be like, that is not true. It is super fun. It is super bold. This week we pitched a campaign idea that involved a roller coaster. Like, how can that be boring?
And the client's logo in the middle of the word fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So if I had to say one thing to B2B marketers, it would be to be more bold, don't play it safe, take more risks, and I think there's a lot that can be learned from Viv, especially I love what she said about how they think every day, how can they be more thumb stopping, how can they be more attention grabbing? And I think that relates a lot to, in the B2B camp, the concept around aiming for fame. So that episode was really, really great. I really enjoyed it.
They've nailed that aim for fame piece.
They really have.
Yeah. And what I really liked from Viv in that conversation was the fact that they would take one piece of real world advertising, like they'd do something physical like the billboards that they had in the Mount, knowing full well that it would only reach a small fraction of the market, but the purpose of that was to create PR fodder. Stuff that could feed their social media channels, get them in the press, and they ended up doing. They were on the news for an interview about their whole business, and the cool thing about that was that they couldn't use the word vibrators on morning news, so they had to swap it with the word sandwiches, which was hilarious. But I just really like that conscious effort on, like you said, aiming for fame and going all out on that creative piece.
Exactly.
What do you listen to, just out of interest? What's your podcast? Do you have one that you go to?
Yeah, I've listened to a few podcasts like Shark Tank, Gary Vee for a while, and most recently I've been listening to, it's not really a podcast, but more of Brene Brown.
Oh, that's the trust stuff, right?
Yeah, the trust stuff. Which has been super useful in terms of personal growth and as well as growth within my professional career. So check out that podcast, guys.
That's awesome. We looking back, we're 10 episodes in. We shot the first one just as a random ad hoc conversation with me and Lee, like literally on Louie's phone. We're 10 episodes in, at the end of our kind of first, I suppose, year of like putting some effort behind this. What do you think we can do with it next year? What would you like to see it achieve next year?
So many things. Just getting more guests on and keeping that cadence going of always having content to produce and get out there. I definitely I see us owning the B2B space in New Zealand, and not in a selfish way, in a way that provides value and learnings from people in the B2B and letting them know that they're not alone.
I love that.
And that we're there with them. Just having fun with it and being super real and relatable, and just growing that. I would really love us not to just grow our audience, but to grow a community, because a community goes beyond the platform. And that is something that I'm really looking forward to in 2024.
That's awesome. I know exactly what you mean. The more that we spend time in this B2B space, the more that you see that there's this group of people who are like, no one really gets us, but we want the world too. And that's cool. If we can be smack bang in the middle of that, then that's a great outcome for us, I think, and for the community as well, hopefully. So next up, Lee Hunter. Lee was the co-star of the very first pilot episode. So when we shot this, you were sitting there, I was sitting here, the wall was white.
It was.
We were using a phone.
We did.
But did you know you're still the most listened to episode on Spotify?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Unclogging a constipated sales funnel with Lee Hunter is the number one, the most listened to show.
Do we get a trophy at the end? Who got number one?
Yeah, I heard you get a bonus.
A bonus?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So we're 10 episodes in.
Wow.
It's been a journey, hey?
10.
Yeah. 10 live, more to come. We've got 4 to be shot over the next 2 weeks, just to kick off for 2024. What are your takeaways? What have you observed? What were the highlights?
I think the highlights being one of the first, it was so scary. It was mind-boggling, but we did it. And I think looking back, one of the coolest things was it was so practical. It was a question everybody was asking.
Mm-hmm.
in the environment we're in, everyone's like, we're filling the funnel, but nothing's coming out. What can we do? So offering practical insights into that, the first one was very, very cool. And I think learning about everybody's story and their journey since then has been incredible.
Yeah, we've spoken to some really cool people.
We have.
Any standouts for you?
They're also unique. I think my favorite is the first one with Roland about the trust. I think holds true. You can't not watch the Viv Conway one.
And smile.
It's so insightful. She was so honest. But I think, that they're all quite unique. Even the Trade Me Jobs was so insightful in terms of a client's perspective on using an agency. They all got value to add.
I loved what Sobia said in that one about treating your agency like a member of your team, onboarding them like a member of your team.
Yeah.
And what was actually really cool was that having her then come and spoken on the podcast about that was that we then had a client come and join us where we were given the induction pack of the marketing chapter. I was like, that's really cool to actually see that play out. Practical takeaway from the one with Roland: you never let a guest wear a turtleneck if you're using a lapel mic. Producer Louis will know all about what I'm saying there.
Is it ever practical to wear a turtleneck? To be honest, forget about a podcast. There's a time and a place, I think.
Or if you're Steve Jobs giving a keynote speech.
Yeah.
Our very own personal Steve Jobs. So 10 episodes in, I think we've had some great conversations. It's certainly, I think, put a lot of good dialogue out into the community, and started a lot of conversations for us as well. What do you want to see it achieve next year?
I think the purpose of it holds true, that it's there to share people's journey and their insights. And I think as long as it stays on that track, I think it'll offer huge insights. As I mentioned to you earlier, I think each of them tell a story. And what I love about them is a normal story has a beginning, a middle, and end. None of these have an end, which means you can take it any part of the podcast and just evolve on it on your own experience. In your own journey. And I think that's what the coolest thing about it is. No one's gone, I started here and I did this really cool thing and then my business is finished. It never ends there. It's like, I'm here, but now I'm about to go there. And that's what's cool. There's always more to come.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. And particularly the people that we've had each of them, they're standout people in their own space, but they're also, I think the thing that I've really enjoyed is just actually talking to really interesting people, good people who are happy to contribute the time, happy to share their thoughts. And I can't wait to come back, in 2 years' time, for example, and see how those journeys and see how those stories have continued to play out. That's going to be a really exciting part of this as well, is like getting to that stage and looking back and saying, 2 years ago, Brandon was here, or Amanda was talking about this, and now look what's happened. So let's look forward to that, hey?
Absolutely. And I suppose equally in the market, with the podcast that we're putting out, people are going, I was actually wondering what the answer to that question, I was wondering what to do here. So making sure that it stays relevant is definitely going to be a huge piece in terms of what we do.
And it's going to be an evolving set of challenges, and by leaning on the community and learning from what people are actually doing and how they're tackling those things, I think it's going to continue to add value to, hopefully, a lot of people.
Yes, hopefully.
Producer Louis is up next. Now, Louis has obviously been instrumental in this journey so far. He's been involved with every single one of our guests. He was there on the pilot, and he's here for the whole 9 yards. So let's hear from Louis. We're 10 episodes in.
Can you believe it, hey?
How does it feel, Producer Louis?
Yeah, it's been a journey, mate. I remember sitting with you last year saying we need to start a podcast, and I knew you had it in the back of your mind to get something out because it had many different positives from it. Long-form content.
Yep.
Meeting other people, creating a community, and for myself as an editor and a filmmaker, it's been an interesting learning journey. And I've learned so much about B2B marketing, and we've had some wonderful guests. And the biggest thing for me has been how open people have been and receptive they have been to be able to come and talk about their part of the world, their markets, their lives, what it means to be a B2B marketer.
And in a real and authentic way, right?
Well, you see, I think that's the beauty about podcasting and filming the conversations, is that it's not necessarily around a dinner table or a lunch. It's actually quite focused. But there's so much experience there that it becomes a conversation, and it's knowledge that we want to share. We've had it's been great.
Apart from that 7-hour, 8-hour drive to Auckland?
Oh, let's not go there, mate. And I don't think anyone will ever appreciate what that actually felt like, in the car. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
It was a pilgrimage.
Unbelievable.
You guys got very deep at one point. You and Shannon, you got pretty existential. And I'm sitting in traffic, just sitting there. I don't actually have that much of an opinion about whether my consciousness will live on, but I just want to get to the junction.
It was a deep conversation. It certainly was. But maybe we need to talk about that at some stage with B2B marketing, what this all actually means in the bigger scheme of things. However, I do want to say a few things about the podcast and commend you as a host in terms of your growth and journey, in terms of putting yourself out there, because I've seen your growth from day one and from the first podcast that we had with Lee when he spoke about unclogging your funnels, etc., which is, there's a whole other storyline there that
I'm going to call it best title of the first 10 episodes.
Well, 100%, and it's still the best downloaded episode. But I mean, from there, the knowledge dissemination is what I wanted. The gathering of people in the know and people not so in the know, being able to talk about a topic which I think is relevant to everybody out in the B2B world. And what Lee said earlier, and what you've also mentioned about, is how much people have actually learned from the different conversations that have been put out there. I'm gonna switch roles here and ask you, from a host perspective, what's your journey been? How have you found it?
It's been a journey. Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting in here, basically pulling you aside and saying, "Louis, right, let's have a crack. Right, bring in some mics, bring in some cameras, whatever we've got. Let's have a go." And we shot that first kind of ad hoc episode with Lee as a pilot, and did that one really, really, really fast, and then found the slow phase of the development. We I don't want to say got stuck in the mud, but the wheels got not bogged down, but it took us a little while to go from that first pilot to something that everyone felt comfortable with. I think that was one of the things that was almost hardest in the journey.
I put my B2B hat on here, and I put my sales and marketing hat from what I've learned is fail fast, learn, and iterate and carry on.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we did. We had to get something done.
Yeah.
And we did that, and we failed in certain regards, but we'd moved the needle.
Yeah.
So we learned from those mistakes and go, okay, cool, this is what we don't want, and this is what we want. And this is exactly what we've created now.
Yeah.
And it will evolve. I'm looking forward to it evolving. So again, I think the key takeaway there is take action. It's all very well to talk about it and hypothesize and pontificate and whatever, until you actually take action. It's been a huge part of my journey in my career, and I've noticed it with everyone. It's just take action, just start. And the thing is, you can't really fail if you think about it, because you can't, because the worst that could happen to you is you could die. No one's died in this process.
One of the things that, like, from my journey that I really have struggled with, certainly through the first few rounds of episodes, and certainly the first ones with external guests, was trying to feel smart and trying to feel like I was putting this version of myself forward that did myself justice and put me on the same level as them. And what's been interesting is that there have been people on the show like Amanda, who's like next level. Man, she has achieved some things. We came back from that conversation with, what was the phrase? Treat them like an archaeologist.
100%.
That was our takeaway from that, was for me as a little mantra, is like, don't try and pretend like you know all the ins and outs and can theorize.
You don't have to.
Just ask sometimes ignorant questions.
Because what happens then, Dale, is that you're putting the questions in from the audience, because the audience is going, I don't know the answer to that, and he's asked that question. And I think that's the difficulty sometimes with you as the host, in terms of the amount of experience and knowledge that you have, is that it's difficult for you to take a step back and ask those perceived ignorant questions. And there is no such thing, because every single one of the guests have come back with positive feedback. Yep. In terms of their experience on the podcast, and that's what it should be. I do want to ask you a question though, just to go a little bit deeper in that, about that feeling of like you feel inadequate. What is that about? Is that in terms of the guest sitting opposite you knowing more than you, or in an arena that you don't know anything about?
I think the biggest challenge, for me certainly, and for anyone who is in a position of now being or wanting to be the podcast host, is that don't think of yourself as the host. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Was I was trying to view myself as, all of a sudden I'm a media person and I've got to be this and I've got to be that. You've helped me enormously. I still say I still say like, I still say so. A lot less, working on it. But I think that was a big thing for me, was to actually just switch off, ignore all this stuff over here, the cameras and whatever else, and actually just try and be myself, rather than the media-ready version of myself, or trying to see myself as the host. Realistically, I'm just here to ask questions. I'm a curious guy. I like asking questions. I like having conversations. That's all I need to do.
What's happening with the podcast in 2024? What can people look forward to? Where do you see this going? And from my side, before you answer that, is for us, as we do B2B, the Blue Ocean podcast, is we want to be consistent with our output, and get up to those 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And if we're providing value, to keep doing that. And I really look forward to what's happening next year and seeing how this will evolve. But what would you say?
So there's two things there. From the production perspective, there's the old adage that content is king. That's fair. I think cadence is king in this context. The one thing that we've done well and that we need to continue to do is just every 2 weeks, without fail, every 2 weeks. And holding ourselves to account on that, because like you said, done is better than perfect. In terms of the impact of the show itself and who we can reach, I found the episode with Roland really interesting, the one on trust, because I live, eat, breathe B2B, right? I don't do anything really other than that in the world of marketing. So to actually have this sort of psychology element brought into the debate was really thought-provoking. So what I'd like to see us do over the next year, as well as having, I guess some flagship B2B guests who we can all look at and say they do a great job, it will be really interesting to try and gather some input from different areas, different fields. Like with Viv, Vibrator's got nothing to do with B2B, but there are so many lessons that we can extract from her journey. I'd like to see us doing the same and sharing some of those stories from outside of the pure B2B marketing world, and maybe pulling in some people from overseas as well. We are a very small market here, so it'd be good to hear some stories from outside the borders, I reckon.
I can't wait for what 2024 holds and see how this evolves. So kudos. Thank you.
It's going to be fun. And next to Henrik Ireland. So Henrik is our co-founder who started the business with Roland over 20 years ago. It's some really interesting things to share from a leadership perspective around what it took to actually put this podcast together, and equally some rich insights around the value of vulnerability and sharing stories, what we can learn from each other, from sharing our own lessons and our own journey. So let's hear from Henrik.
But what I did reflect on when I was on the podcast was actually I was quite cold, and it made me a little bit jittery, I think.
Oh, your body temperature was cold?
Yes, my body temperature was a bit cold. So I have to do another one where
we'll have to stick the aircon up a little bit warmer for the next one.
Yeah, where I could be more relaxed.
Yeah.
And,
you did well. I mean, your episode was the first one that went public. Yours was the first one that went out to the market. First of now 10 that have been shared with the world. So it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, having watched the journey, been part of the journey. What have you taken away from the first 10 episodes of We Do B2B?
Oh, I mean, being part of the business, I have so loved it. I love the conversations. And I must say what I particularly like is how relaxed they are. It just feels like a good old friend that comes in and we have a little talk about them and their life. And the way the setting, the impact it has on the people, that they relax and they open up and they share. And I think that's really what I get out of this. It's these are high caliber people that have experience and knowledge. They've had failures, they've had success, and they're sharing both. And I particularly like, the failures. The people you've had in is like, okay, that didn't go well. And I learned a lot from that. Because I love, I mean, personally, that you get a lot more out of a failure than a success.
100%.
A lot of the time when you have a success, you don't necessarily always know why it was you succeeded. But with a failure, you can usually pinpoint and say, okay, that made me fail or us fail. And they share that. And by listening to other people's success and failures, you can learn from that. So you can avoid those pitfalls and get there quicker.
I really loved how open Amanda Armstrong was about that when she was talking about leadership and how she thought she was a good leader until she came across someone or something that really represented good leadership, and how she's like, wow, I've missed the mark. I had so much respect for her actually talking about that.
Yes, and I think you managed as a host to make them relax and vulnerable and open up. I love that. And just the takeaway that these are successful people that are vulnerable and admits, they were wrong, they did the wrong way, and also just, I don't know if I was confident enough to do that, but I did it. And it's like, okay, because I think we need more of that in New Zealand as a whole. We need to believe more in ourselves and take chances and just go for it.
I had a conversation with someone from the University of Waikato the other day, and they were talking about the whole concept of tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand. And he had a really interesting take that it's not like tall poppy syndrome. His analogy was watching people in business in New Zealand is like watching a bucket full of crabs. And ever so often, one of them starts to put their claw out, and they start clawing their way out, and then the rest of them just grab and pull it back into the bucket.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think if we can help more crabs make it out of the bucket, then that would be great. But certainly sharing some of those stories is it's been very rewarding for me. Certainly, getting to talk to some of the people that we have. I've been so grateful that people have given us the time and been so open to actually sharing some of their journey and some of their story. It makes me happy on a personal level that you, as our COO, you come from you're a very strong marketer, but you also come from a background of finance. I think of you as being a very cerebral person, and the fact that you've enjoyed the podcast for me is like a great badge of honor, because if I can and we can produce content that's enriching your drive to Auckland, we're winning.
Oh, every single one of those podcasts I've loved listening to, and I've listened to them more than once, each of them. And I'm probably your biggest fan.
I was going to say we went through the Spotify Unwrapped report yesterday. So for 20 people, we were in their top 10. For 16, we were in their top 5. And for 6 people, we were the number 1 podcast. I'm guessing I'm one. I'm guessing you're the other.
I am. Yes, definitely. Your number 1 podcast is the Blue Ocean B2B Agency podcast. It's every episode is worth listening to.
Which has been your favorite? What's been the standout episode for you, or the standout moments from the first 10?
There's so many to choose from. To be honest, I love the diversity and the spectrum from Henry. I really got a lot of Henry, partly because it's a software as a service, and I just loved, with my accounting background as well, how they just really paved the way for a new way of doing accounts and helping independent contractors to overcome an obvious struggle, and the journey they had was great to listening to.
And they've innovated even more since then. They've got their own credit cards now, so everything gets automatically expensed. It's a fantastic journey to have watched. What I really liked about that conversation with Palmer from Henry was just how pragmatic he was and open he was about, in his words, getting off the sugar rush of performance marketing, coming from that bottom of funnel search advertising background, to then, okay, well, how do I do brand? But then using what he knew from search as a way of actually quantifying the impact of brand, that whole maximize what you can spend and then work out if the brand is letting you spend more because you've created more demand. I thought that was a really, really good insight.
And also his journey as a single team marketing to growing and not doing all the execution himself, but having to rely on a team and growing that and changing. And also his interactions with CEO and board in regards to strategic priorities and saturating the market for spend,
Yep.
which was fascinating because we all experienced that, and just hearing from somebody else that has been through that and have those learnings and share them, I loved it.
Yeah. That was one of the standouts for me. We'll have to get him up to the studio. Maybe
Yes.
do a catch up in 18 months, 2 years time, and see how that journey's continued. But that'll be great. Good.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? You don't have to have any, but just.
I mean,
just
I
while we-
also just like the banter that's in between. I mean, particularly your latest podcast with Girls Get Off. I mean,
that was fun. That was so fun.
yeah, that was actually fun. And I particularly also like just how it's so focused on B2B, but still manages to dial in across and put it in perspective of marketing, B2C and D2C for that matter, and really just leveraging off the thinking and the differences it highlights. Because I think the whole industry really needs that new dimension in their marketing for better understanding B2B, but also the similarities between good old-fashioned marketing.
Yeah, the lessons that we can learn from outside of the pure B2B camp.
Yes. Yeah.
So what would you like to see it achieve in 2024 as an entity of its own right, and then also from a business perspective for Blue Ocean?
So as a personal fan, I would just love more episodes. I love it.
Cool.
I feel like I get to know these people and that enriches me.
Great.
So I'm biggest fan. I will continue to be that. And I think from a business perspective, I love the fact that we have this as an opportunity where we can reach out and talk to people and bring them on board. Because I see the reaction in people when they come on board, how engaged they are and passionate they are, and how it builds their brand as well as the business they work for. And I think the benefit it brings to the industry as a whole is fantastic. And I mean, not to mention our own business. I think this really cements us as a B2B agency for the future.
Yeah, 100%. One last final take from me is that if you want to make sure that you are in a space and your connection requests on LinkedIn get accepted, become a podcast host in that space. Because I've gone from having maybe like a 1 in 3 acceptance rate to just doesn't matter who I connect with now. Everyone is like, cool, interested, yep. So if you're
And lastly, I thank you to you, Dale, for being a fantastic host.
Thank you.
And also for being the outreach for getting a lot of our guests in. And let's not forget Louis, our amazing
100%.
Producer who puts it all together, makes sure the sound's spot on and the pictures. I absolutely love what you guys have done here. Well done. And I'm looking forward to 2024, full steam ahead, more interesting people sharing the failures, the success, the growth, the learnings. Can't wait.
Neither can I. Next up, we're going to hear from Jo Tauti. Jo is our general manager here at Blue Ocean, and she's got some really, really interesting insights around, I suppose, the behind-the-scenes piece of how developing and delivering the We Do B2B podcast has played out. So let's hear from Jo. So you actually, your desk is right opposite the podcast studio, and you've watched, I suppose, how many guests now? We've had 10.
So many.
10 come through.
Yeah.
And it's been I suppose it's been a bit of a pillar point around which a pretty transformational year has happened in the Blue Ocean camp.
Absolutely, it has. It absolutely has. And it's been fascinating to watch everybody develop and grow so much as a result of it. You know, having these people come in, learn from them, and take things away. And from my little corner, watching it has been fascinating.
Who's been the, of all the people who've sat there, who was like, you know, when you look around the side of your monitor, who was the most interesting person to observe?
Oh, it had to be Viv.
100%.
I'm sorry. But I think we were all so intrigued as a result of, you know, the sort of precursor to her coming in.
Yeah.
And using phrases like that didn't help at all. And we all kind of got in the spirit of it, so to speak. And yeah, it was great fun. It was an enormous amount of fun. But actually, she's an enormously inspiring,
incredible woman.
Yeah, absolutely, and so friendly. And yeah, it was great. It was lovely to watch. And of course, we were all observing in one way, shape, or form from the outside of the office, to be fair.
I have this image in my head of everyone kind of looking through the glass and
Yeah.
thinking, what are they talking about?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that. And then every now and then we heard giggles, you know, and that sort of thing.
So, cool.
Sobia was also awesome. She's quite a character.
100%.
And yeah, that came through quite clearly as well. Quite
It was
strong.
really fun having her and her partner Nick down here as well.
Yeah,
you know.
that's right. They're sort of joining in the crew and sort of sitting in the office and
Yeah.
working from here. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun times, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a good year.
it's been some really good stuff.
It's been a big learning curve for, I think, all of us, and quite a few changes. But they are good and positive, and I think anything worth doing comes with a little bit of pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, there's actually quite an interesting perspective that we can lean on there, which is this has represented a fair amount of time and investment on our part, right?
Enormous,
Yeah. So from the perspective of someone who is, you know, very much involved in workload forecasting and making sure that we've got the resource that we need.
Gulp. I'm going to have to answer this one, aren't
You
I?
are gulp. But I mean, there was probably a bit of a gulp moment where we're like, we're going to do this. It's
Yeah.
going to take this much time, and we have no idea if it's going to work.
Absolutely. And that in itself, I mean, you know, you've got to look at these things and be aspirational, listen, learn, and try it, because you're never going to know if you don't. The scary part is taking the amount of time that it did away from our leadership group, which is ostensibly what was going on, and then seeing if we could work around that and then look at what the results were, which have spoken for themselves. It's just been exponential and worth its weight in gold.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so good to hear.
So I'm really happy with that. So, and I think that moving forward, it's going to be something that's going to become such a regular commitment for us and such a huge part of what we do. And I love the community that it's growing. You know, it's really lovely to see.
Cool.
And it's so nice to be a fundamental foundation part of that.
I fully agree. Yeah.
So it's been great.
Well,
Congratulations to you and producer Louis.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Well, should we? Is that our quarterly review? Should we just take that and bank it?
Nailed it, mate. Nailed it. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to review me now?
Next up, you'll hear from Shannon Bayliss. He's our creative team lead here at Blue Ocean. He's an avid podcast listener, and he's really, really interested and keen to see where We Do B2B can go. Shannon, from 2 episodes.
Yeah.
How to Pitch a Brand Refresh and the
Double D debate.
The Big Double D debate, which was a name that I struggled with, I won't lie. Yeah. So you're joining us fresh out of a presentation to a client on brand positioning.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Oh, it was awesome. Awesome to take the client through their thinking and get their feedback along the way. You know, it's very much a collaborative process.
Yeah.
Making sure we're hitting on all of the points that are important to them, but resolving that to a single idea that they can get behind. You know, they already had an idea for a tagline, but it was really about, well, what does that stand for? How do we implement that? How do we execute that going forward?
And breathe meaning to it.
Breathe meaning to it, yeah. So, yeah, that was really fun. And then we explored some design ideas off the back of that. So
it sounds like a fun morning.
It's always good to, not just present, oh, hey, here's my one idea. I hope you like it, with no background context or anything. It's good to sort of take them on that journey. The client appreciates it, and it sort of comes and lives a bit. There's not so much writing on one client presentation.
Yeah. It's always that presenting the one thing is always terrifying, particularly when it's a client that you're excited about. Yeah. It feels like do they think I'm cool?
Yeah.
Which we had earlier on in the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were part of 2 episodes. You were a pretty pivotal part of developing, I suppose, the tone and the look and feel and everything else that went around We Do B2B. So 10 episodes in, looking backwards, what are your takeaways? Any highlights from the first 10? Any learnings?
It's so exciting to see the level and the caliber of guests that you've managed to bring on. So that's really exciting. That makes me very proud to be a part of Blue Ocean and to be backing the We Do B2B podcast, and it makes me proud to actually just share it and talk about it. You know, it was quite exciting, your discussion with Viv Conway about Girls Get Off, and I mean the key takeaway I got from that was when you can't necessarily talk about your thing in the public domain like Facebook or and you can't advertise on the normal channels because of whatever reason. And we've got a couple of clients like that.
Yes, yeah, we do actually, yeah.
Aiming for fame and trying to get some press and media out of it is such an interesting goal, and one that sort of breaks the mold a little bit.
You've got my thoughts whirring now, because there is one client in particular who there's one word that as soon as we mention it, the ad account almost gets shut down there and then.
Yeah.
I wonder how we could aim for fame in that context. It's an interesting one. How about other episodes? Any other takeaways?
It was interesting. It was a bit of a drinking from a HiFo's moment. I think your discussion with Sobia from Trade Me, she had a lot to say. It was a very fast-paced conversation. You were talking about how to work with agencies and how to get the best out of that partnership. And but I thought it was interesting how she saw herself as a connector of departments.
Yeah.
Between the customer and her team. And you broke the fourth wall and just said, everybody listening, I just want to make sure everybody knows that you should do that as a way to progress your career.
Yeah, that was such a good insight from Sobia, actually. And now that you've flagged that, it was a real standout comment, because I mean, there are so many different areas that the marketing skill set gets to touch, and that was a really, she put it really articulately and in that kind of classic energetic Sobia way as well, which was that was a really good moment.
Yeah.
Any others? Any other kind of lessons?
Well, I mean, as an agency, right? We deal with clients, and obviously, and so what Sobia brought to that discussion was treat your agency like a partner, not just like a delivery mechanism.
Yeah.
And obviously, we as an agency, we find that approach to be so much more enjoyable as well as helpful when we work. We learn how the client works, and we can teach them how we work, and then we get a synergy going.
Yeah.
That has rang true for the entire time I've been here.
100%. We actually Lee flagged that point as well, and what was I think really rewarding for me in that conversation was that Sobia was talking about this concept of inducting your agency like a member of staff, and then the week after we shot the podcast with her, we were onboarding a new client, and their approach was to onboard us, induct us into their sales and marketing chapter, and we actually got the employee induction pack and everything else like that. That really reinforced that, I suppose, that message, because we're all over the moon with something like that. You just feel so welcome. So that was a really good takeaway for me as well.
Yeah.
What do you see the show achieving in 2024?
Yeah, I'm excited about seeing who else is in the ocean, so to speak. Who are the like you say, in B2B, it's a little bit of a hidden treasure trove of brilliant people who may be complete experts and complete have complete fame in the industry, but nobody knows about them.
Yeah.
And you talked about that with Sobia. FMCG gets a lot of interest, a lot of hype. Everybody knows, oh, you worked on that. Oh, God, wow. But as soon as you talk about, you might work on a client that distributes lawnmower blades. They might be the best in the world, and they might be doing a killer job leading the market, but yet nobody knows about it. So, but those are the people who are doing who we can learn from.
And I think that's a really that's definitely a part of it that excites me as well. So when you talk to someone, like Sobia or any of the guests that we've had, or to be honest, really anyone in B2B, there's so many interesting things to learn about them, about their industry. We've been working with people this year who are absolute world leaders in a market that doesn't exist here, and outside of the four walls of New Zealand, so to speak, they're like rock stars in the USA.
Yeah.
Everyone in their industry knows them, but the people in the office next door to them here would not have a clue. So if we can share some of those stories, I think it's really inspiring to be able to actually see that there are these hidden gems, so to speak, not just the businesses, but the people themselves as well. So I'd love to see more of that next year.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Shane Jackson. He is one of our digital marketing, I don't even know how to describe you, Shane, because you do so many different things. Digital marketing, project management, whiz bang everything.
Launch pilot.
Launch pilot, I like. Yeah, that's a good description. And ironically, the guy who brought me on board 6 years ago.
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yes.
It's been, to use your phrase, bloody marvellous.
Yeah. Doesn't time fly?
Yeah, it does. So we're 10 episodes in to We Do B2B. Just wanted to kind of hear from the team if you've got any standout moments, anything that you've taken away from the process, any kind of any takeaways.
I've really enjoyed seeing the people coming through that we've got on the podcast. It's fantastic to see them here and talking about their work. Just really inspiring stuff. Love the podcast. So yeah, I think it's going great.
Oh, that's awesome. There were some really, really in-depth conversations, particularly the one with Brandon Palmer from Henry around just that trade-off between search marketing and brand marketing. Have you listened to that one?
Yes, not the whole thing, but yes.
Yeah. From your perspective in that launch pilot kind of space, what would you like to see? What would you like to see the podcast covering in 2024?
It's really how you set fire to something. That's what I'm really keen. And I suppose that works in with the launch pilot stuff that I do. But lighting the blue touch paper, like the magic that happens there.
Yeah.
When you see what our creative guys are up to, just sensational stuff. I would love to dig into that and get some more understanding of how that actually functions.
Cool. Okay, so if we can get some guests who can come and talk about burning shit up.
Yep. Absolutely.
Fantastic. You've also now, I guess, been involved in the mechanics of actually distributing and circulating the podcast. Any kind of tips for someone who's going through a similar thing? Anything that you'd look at and share in terms of the actual mechanics of it?
We're using third-party tools,
yeah.
Which is great because if you had to go out there and upload it to every platform, you'd be spending a whole week doing that just on one. So paying a little bit to get that stuff happening for you. I love automation, and it's not because I'm lazy. I just think you can spend your time doing better things than repetitively doing tasks. Get that automation in place. That would be my number one recommendation. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Roland Lehman's now our CEO here to join in the conversation and weigh in on the retrospective of 10 episodes of We Do B2B and looking forward to the future of what comes next. So thank you, Roland. You were our guest on, I want to say, episode number 4, Building Trust.
Yep.
Great episode, really good episode. The one thing that we took away from that from a production perspective is don't invite guests wearing turtlenecks when you're using lapel mics. It was a great episode and certainly one of the ones that came a little bit out of left field in terms of it brought perspectives in from outside the pure B2B camp. So I really enjoyed that. But what have been the standouts for you through the first 10 episodes?
I think that each episode had something to bring to not just marketers, but business leaders. I think that for me, looking back, is the sharing, is how people are so willing to share their experience so that they can help the community.
That's been really humbling, actually. To have some of those conversations with people who are, giants of their own space. Coming on to episode 7 of a podcast that was started up 2 months ago and joining it and being prepared to get in, I suppose, at the ground floor and share some of their knowledge. It's something that you're obviously quite passionate about, and certainly from our own perspective, there's a purpose behind this. What are your thoughts, and can you share some insights on that and how this whole thing fits?
I think that the podcast that was very interesting for me was Amanda.
Yeah.
Amanda, when she was talking about the sharing of knowledge of sales processes, sales playbook, and things like that. I think that's very much what we stand for as an organization and myself. I love teaching, I love
Learning.
and teaching. That's what we do here. Sharing knowledge with students at the university, within the organization, coaching people. It's all about being able to give back what you've learned over the years, because you're not on your own, and that is a big thing.
But I think it's a thing that for people in the B2B community, we were just talking about this with Shannon. When it's not like FMCG, right? It's not like working for the big famous brand. You can be a giant in your field, and the person in the building next door has no idea that you exist or what you do. So I think actually from the community perspective, being able to bring people onto a forum where suddenly you can see that actually I'm not alone. There are other people like me. They've got similar challenges. I'd love to see more of that going into the next year.
I think that what people don't always relate to is that the big brand, the big FMCG, or any brand that people truly know, only represent this part of the economy.
Yeah.
Because it's the entire supply chain that comes before that. And it's the supply chain that is actually the engine behind, and they're all B2B.
They're all B2B.
And they're all B2B, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating space to be part of. So what would you like to see the podcast achieve in 2024? By the end of 2024, what would success look like?
Ooh, that's a good one. What does success look like?
That's one of your questions.
Yeah, it's one of my questions when I do discovery process with a big company. So success would be that there is a community.
Yeah.
And that community support each other. And I'm not talking about the linking group, or I'm talking about real, genuine, I've got time to give to other businesses that might be either struggling or other people within our community that actually need new ideas. It's something that we tried to do during COVID. During COVID, we had a lot of time at Blue Ocean, and what we decided to do is to create that community, and that's probably one of the outcomes. This podcast is one of the outcomes of that time where people were struggling, and we had plenty of time to give. And I think that if we can, in New Zealand, get beyond the simplicity of I will do it myself, and that you can work as a team of people that are supporting each other and creating that community, I think that would be success for me. That would be worth every penny of the investment in this.
So to lift one of our clients' taglines as a response to that, challenge accepted. No, yes. I would love to see that come together. I think one of the things that we will definitely focus on next year is not just connecting industry, but also education. We obviously have students with us at the moment here as interns, and there's a strong relationship there with academia. But what we've seen recently is a real appetite from the academic world to engage with industry in order to actually output and groom, I suppose, much more market-ready students. So I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see more of that.
Bringing students so that they better understand. I mean, students that get out of university, usually they don't have much of experience. And so we have opened our door to students to give them the opportunity to work on projects quite independently. And that's fantastic. It's a great output for us, it's great output for the student, and we've got valuable research out of it. I think that it relates a lot to where we are as an organization. Many years back, we really redefined our 4 core values as an organization. And one of them is to be able to empower, which is our North Star, empower people to go and do whatever they've got to do. And that comes from other 3 core values, which is caring for others and learning and sharing your knowledge. And I think this is exactly what this podcast is about. is about empowering the community by sharing our knowledge and caring that what you're sharing is about making sure that you're empowering them.
And it's bang on. I mean, I've been so impressed by the guests that we have brought on, how open they are to sharing not just the successes, but also the stumbling blocks along the way, those hard-learned lessons that actually I've gone through it and I'm going to share it, so maybe you don't have to. So let's see more of that.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That was a wrap-up of the first 10 episodes, what we've learned, what we're looking forward to. I hope that the next one comes to you guys after 50 episodes or even 100. I hope we make it that far, but from what we've heard today, it looks like we're going to. So, I've said so again. One of fantastic takeaway. I've said fantastic, which is another one. I have these tics, right? Producer Louis tells me off for saying the word so. He tells me off for saying the word like, for saying fantastic and awesome too much. So, fuck. Maybe we haven't learned that much. That was it. Have fun. Happy Christmas. Have a great New Year and everything else like that. We look forward to more of this in 2024. Thanks for joining.